Good morning, friends. It's it's Monday, right after New Year's. We're at the start of 2020, and a lot has happened in the first few days. January 6th, Epiphany today. This is when, in the mythological timeline, which is really to help you hold your head together in terms of mnemonics, this is the day the three kings show up in Bethlehem or whatever and give the gifts. Um, as mnemonics, these stories make a lot of sense. They remind you of other things, which remind you of other things, and that's kind of how I do my YouTubes. I use reminders to trigger myself and my viewers. So if you've listened to like 10 of my YouTubes, you might start to see that I'm in a pinball machine and I just sort of bounce around on a spherical pinball machine, the way I think of it. I also talk about hypertunes, which are topologically isomorphic if you want them to be. So on the screen, occupy history here. Let's see. I can make this a little bigger here. Show a little more text. I'll probably cut and paste this to Medium at some point. It's mnemonics again. I want to work in important events and do it in a pithy way. Like, can you write a history of the recent United States in just a few hundred words or less, right? I'm not getting to write a book here. It's an exercise. And I tell people on Facebook, I know this is Blogspot, but I say, Occupy History Project, write your own history of up to where Tulsi becomes president. Here's mine. So it's like a simulation, right? Tulsi Gabbard is one of the presidential candidates, and I've touched on her campaign and Yang's campaign and a bunch of others. I don't call this a political channel. I don't think I've filed much of my YouTubes with under politics at all. But of course, I still talk about current events. I just don't specialize in politics that much, which is why I had never heard of this um, the Iranian commander who's had the biggest funeral in all world history and so on, and was just murdered in an airport at the direction of somebody, a group, a cabal that includes so-called POTUS and all that, right? So I talk about impotus here, actually, which is kind of a joke, but I peg it back to, like, I want to work in the murder of John F. Kennedy, right? That should be in my history. It's that important. I also talk about Smedley Butler, FDR. Smedley Butler has some ties to Quakers. I'm Quaker, so there's that. And basically, I'm following Fletcher Prouty in talking about the coup in 1963 when they installed impetus number one, Emperor Johnson. He hadn't been elected or anything. So, Emperor, Imperial Presidency, remember those memes, right? It helps to remember what the superpower meme virus had done to people. We're a superpower. That's dangerous. And it kind of took over the thinking. And when the USSR broke up, it just made things a lot worse. We got into what you could call Cold War II. Anyway, we're up to Naked Emperor number 10 right now. As I kind of pitched this at the high school level. I'm not trying to be like, Council on Foreign Relations here with academic papers and a lot of footnotes and stuff, but I do have artifacts. And one I show a lot, of course, is the Fuller projection, which I'm going to put in front of my face here for a second. I'll scoot back. All right. I know it doesn't really fit, and I can do some post editing and put some Fuller maps up there. But the important thing about the map, two things. Bob Gray picks out one of them: the fact that the lines, the sinuses as they're called, don't interrupt the land masses, right? He and Soji Sadao worked hard to find an alignment that would work like that. So you get the one island and one ocean effect. But the other number two important aspect of his map is he copyrighted it and didn't want us to put the nation states on there, the political boundaries, because he was basically saying The planet is like a computer chip or a motherboard. In fact, almost you could say literally, it's a very bio motherboard, and the word mother is important too there. Board but spherical. BOARD. It's electronic circuits, literally electronic too. And all the chemistry's there. It's the biosphere is what I'm talking about. And then there's the language we use to program ourselves to be in this place and adapt and get along or not, the programming language. And with the postmodern discourse, you could say it's about bots now. It's hard to tell between AI and artificial or phony intelligence and the real deal. What's the difference? Well, I think there is a difference, but I don't think that it's always easy to discern. Could go into that, but more important, I want to just go into the fact that the number two fact of not showing nations is relevant now to today's events because what we see is total disrespect of this concept of sovereignty, right? It's not a new thing with the murder of this guy in the airport. It's been going on now. I mean, they call it a civil war in quote unquote Syria, but you've got bombers going in there from all over the place, right? It's not a purely internal affair, let's put it that way. You could call it a civil war, but a lot of political talk is just people with self-serving agendas, mine as well, right? Spin doctoring. So that's the whole thing here. The sovereignty thing didn't last forever. It's been so disrespected and destroyed in the Middle East that the Persians are getting what they want, really, and Judea, Mesopotamia, those kind of places. I use those terms now because I am drawing attention to the lack of sovereignty in there. And hey, Persians have wanted Israel to like go away, and I'm saying planet Zion, right? It's the whole planet is Israel, the promised land. Oh, and I've got something in Quaker about that. I'll do that on another video. I don't always go to all my texts and all my postings and try to make videos out of them. That wouldn't work. And now I'm going really fast, so you would have to stop the video if you really care about my Facebook that much. But I'm going back and looking for. You can see I'm doing my homework on Qasem Soleimani right now. I'm like I say, I don't read the Middle East press. Hadn't really heard of the guy. And one of my critiques here is whoever planned this operation, they didn't get the outrage or the catharsis from the Americans because they hadn't done their planting of stories. They didn't have like a Mockingbird network to get the media prepped for this. So it caught everyone on off guard and by surprise as a nasty surprise because we had just had New Year's parties and all that kind of stuff. And you wake up and there's been no prep work. So it's, I would say, extremely amateurish what was done by people who don't really do government for a living and they don't care about the law. They never have. In fact, breaking the law has been their stock and trade. We do live in a nation of scoff laws. Got it. And organized crime has penetrated government forever now, right? You could just see a continuous lawlessness, but not lawlessness. There are codes of conduct. And a lot of what's going on these days is a clash between sort of a gangland mobster code of conduct with its rules and payback and revenge, and then the military code of conduct, which depended on the nation state for its pomp and circumstance, its authority, slow wheels that turn, big wheels that turn slow and all that. Now we have a lot of little wheels, and it's becoming increasingly transparent, I think, that my mnemonics are on target and that we've had imposter presidents since Reagan. Reagan was clearly a hands-off president, you know. And he revealed, though, under Reagan, we saw the deep state, so-called, the corruption, this kind of scuttling that goes on, the creatures of the deep that just run things, drug running for weapons, for fighting in Central America, the Ollie North types who ultimately corroded the government to the point of unrecognizable. No three branches anymore. Congress has kind of opted out. And the president is saying, well, you could follow me on Twitter when I bomb the hell out of whoever I feel like it, right? I am the tyrant now. So martial law is what I'm saying. And when I teach at the high school level, it's like, yeah, and sovereignty, the way grown-ups of the past thought of it, is long gone. We don't have an intelligent programming language in DC right now. So again, what Fuller was saying, did I ever get to that? I think I'm almost there. What Fuller was saying, and what I say in general systems theory, is it's all about upgrading our language, right? It's how we are programmed, how the bots program themselves. We're auto programming, we're self updating to a degree. We do freeze into certain thought patterns. It gets harder as you get older to like just sort of start fresh, like learn a whole new language. Like I tackled Rust recently, but I'm not good at it yet. And it's like, but then it takes years, right? So design science revolution was part of the self-reprogramming that goes on to keep us alive on planet Earth. And that's meant, working together at the global level, Linux and so on, lots of help from all over the place. And, coding with people in every part of the world, right? Including the Middle East and the former countries. I'll say former countries. Everyone still is bot programmed to behave exactly like their reflex conditioning says they should, and I'll flash a passport to get from A to B. I'm not saying that nations are gone as a matter of conditioned reflex. It's just when we're teaching big picture overview, you do want to understand that this futurist who predicted, saw, forecast, and understood the need for a more globalist thinking pattern, which the nationalists say is a big threat to them. I think I've said how it isn't, right? We can have more nations. We can have virtual nations. We can have Kurdistan as a virtual nation, just like corporations are virtual nations, right? They have governance, they're global, they rally up assets, marshal assets on a grand scale, right? So, in terms of global institutions, we have a lot of them, and social media included. So, it's not again that I'm anti-nationalist. I just see the morphing of the concepts and the changing of the the gravitas that used to anchor um, world affairs in people's minds is gone, and we have more of a farcical thing going. I guess I'll end with my little political cartoon. Did I show this already? I don't remember. Gives me a quick chance to go through Flickr. I got a lot of my life online, if you hadn't noticed, plus an easy name to search. So if you're curious about me, this is Barry's rig that he's built himself. So he's an inventor, right? So we went through that. But what I'm trying to get to is my political cartoon. We had a New Year's party at El Mercado, which was very fun. Thank you, Chris. And Leela was through from Nepal, right? So I've done videos on her. This is a stash of like language learning that she's getting from her Sanskrit studies. She's doing like dance and music intensive education there. Now she's here stateside, and I'll see her in a few days actually. And this was my daughter and my sister. Oh, my sister gave me a small jitterbug, right? I've got the big one. I can put one inside the other. Thank you, Julie, for the little jitterbug, right? And this is by Demert, which actually did the glow in the dark buckyball, where I found my own writing in the toy because they had bought it from Roger Gilbertson some while back of Mondotronics. He had me do writing about Buckminster Fullerene for his thing, and then his toy went to Demert, and there was my writing all over again. I don't actually have that toy in my collection, but now I have this one. So here's my little cartoon, which I will end on. Giant moron thing traps the district. That's what we call the swamp, right? Where they inject you with swamp juice and you turn into a bot. The way all the fears, kind of glandular fears they have of like Russia and stuff. You have to live in DC a little while. or just hang out on the right frequencies. It's all about what radio channels do you listen, what frequencies are you on? Okay, so we're trapped in a giant farce bubble. Superman, where are you? Got my backwards R going. Again, mnemonics, right? Remember the mind brain distinction? We're talking synergetics, American transcendentalism, all that stuff that most universities aren't up on. Some people say because they're cowards. I was watching that Renegade University guy on Joe Rogan talking about cowardice, and that's interesting. He's closer to academia than me, but I'll learn from him. I've got a note out because he comes up to Portland a lot. So anyway, networking continues, and this progress through fear, 1969. That's a long time ago, but Fuller's talking about narco terrorism and experimental psychological and physical war, proxy war. He's a very worldly guy, this Bucky. He was a major futurist. And like I say, they don't teach him really or take him seriously, partly because they were going to write off synergetics as just crack pottery. But then I showed, and many of us showed, but I showed in videos here that it's actually mainstream high school worthy everyday math in a literature, wrapped in literature. So the not teaching it again undermines the argument that we have public schools at all. And I've opened that as a debating resolution in another group. Resolved. The USA has no public schools. Of course, under the hood there would be the corollary that we have no USA, which again, it's the planet or nothing really. I mean, so I'm loyal to the flag. It's just I take it to the next level. I had to pledge allegiance as a kid, and rather than go back on that, I've thought of ways that, the whole world is the US now, but that doesn't mean going around murdering people actually. Not It's the world now. We got to be careful with this place. It's our biochip, our motherboard, and how do you think? When do you say we? Focus on your pronoun we. If you want a meditation to improve your programming, think about your we and your deployment of that noise. It's important. All right, I'll talk to you in the near future. Hang in there. Hold it together.